Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our Game of the Year deliberations, talking about our honors and special awards for this year. I am Taylor Ray, co-host of the 1P versus 2P podcast, along with my brother and co-host Ryan Ray. We are starting off this episode with our remaining honors special awards for part 2. Starting off with, actually, Ryan, why don't you read through our categories?
Sure. Our categories for this part include Best New Character, Best Gameplay Moment, Best Music, Biggest/Most Important News Story, and finally, Worst Trend. A lot of interesting categories for this part, a lot of interesting deliberations we're about to have. So let's go ahead and start off with the first category tonight, Best New Character. This lot of interesting characters for this year in games, and so I'm just going to read off this list of the character nominated and also the game that they appear in. Trouser from Yooka-Laylee, Makoto from Persona 5, Hestu from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Helix from ARMS, Pascal from Nier Automata, Marina from Splatoon 2, Rabid Peach from Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Cade 6 from Destiny 2, Failsafe from Destiny 2, Fane from Divinity 2 Original Sin, Rookie from Pyre, Shriv from Star Wars Battlefront 2, Sigrun Engel from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, and Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. A lot of interesting contenders here, Taylor. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a big list, and generally this is a very subjective category. It's so hard to pick your favorites. I know I have a couple that stand out to me. I'm going to have to say Pascal from Nier Automata is definitely up there on the list for me.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we should warn our listeners up at the top. We are going to talk about probably some gameplay spoilers, so if you haven't had a chance to finish this year's games or some of the games that we're talking about, this is your warning in advance now. We are going to get into it with some of these character and gameplay moments. So watch out for that. All right, now that we've done the spoiler warning, please go ahead and continue. You were talking about Pascal?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say also, we'll try our best if we're having major spoilers, we will also mention it, so maybe you can fast forward 30 seconds and skip over the part that you don't want to hear for a game that you may not have played yet. So we'll talk about that, especially for these first two categories, like you said. Yeah, so Pascal is interesting. So Nier Automata is sort of this future dystopia where humans have been evacuated from the Earth, and Earth has been taken over by deadly machines. And you play as these sort of androids that are trying to reclaim Earth back from the machines in order to save the humans. Now, the interesting thing is that over the course of I would say the start of the game, it happens pretty early. You meet a machine called Pascal, and she's sort of the leader of a sort of rebellion group, or I should say a pacifist rebellion group, that don't believe that machines should be killing humans or androids. They don't believe in battling at all. So she sort of leads this enclave of these machines that believe in pacifism, right? That won't attack you on sight, nor can you attack them. I know story-wise, there's a lot of mystery behind her. I'm going to give up the floor to you, Ryan, because I know you can talk a little bit more about her character.
Right, so Pascal kind of serves as your philosophical, spiritual guide, sort of a Jiminy Cricket-like figure in Nier Automata, and we'll get into it with Best Gameplay Moment, but Pascal's arc is just tremendous, and let's just talk about it now. Huge spoilers for Nier Automata. Basically, Pascal goes from being this very peaceful leader of this village, it's sort of a like motherly figure protecting the little robots in her village, protecting them from the violence outside in the world. And then violence comes to her doorstep, and she's confronted with, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? So eventually what happens is the village has to get evacuated. They have to relocate. And then Pascal is basically forced to fight for her village. And it's this big open question about, what does it take to get peace in this world? And eventually the conclusion she reaches is like, sometimes you have to stand up and fight for yourself. And it's such like a big, like a swelling moment. Like you actually control Pascal as a playable character. It's very empowering. It's swelling music. You take control of this big robot as Pascal, and you just like clobber the other robots. And then you come back and come back home to like the villagers that you've been fighting for. And the villagers have like self-destructed. And Pascal is just totally like broken and I can't believe this happened. Why did this happen? Just beside herself. And then ultimately, Pascal offers you a choice, whether to kill her or like wipe her memories. And you actually have a third option that the game doesn't state. You can actually like walk away from that. Based on how you feel about Pascal, you as the player have a very like important decision to make. And if you decide to walk away or erase her memories, what eventually happens is if you come back to that spot, you'll find Pascal like basically selling the body parts of the robots that killed themselves. And it's a very like just heartbreaking moment because you know how much she cared for these robots and how much of like a person she felt like. And then all of a sudden for her to just be like, no, just wipe it away. I don't want to remember this anymore. This is so awful. And then she like turns into the awfulness because she doesn't like know what she's fighting for anymore. It's just like an incredible moment. And it's just like, honestly, one of the best characters in that entire game. Pascal is just, I can't believe a character like that exists in a video game. What a tremendous thing that is. I think Pascal has to be on this list. Whether she wins or not is up for debate, but I think she has to be on this list.
Well, that's the reason why I honestly brought her up early, because I knew that you would pine for her specifically, and I would agree with you, and that's why I wanted to bring that up first and foremost, because I think it is an important story and a really interesting character. So I agree with you that it should be included in the top 3. The rest of these, I don't see a lot of other strong contenders. I will give you my favorites from this list.
Okay.
I really like some of these I picked out of character design, but I don't think that they have really interesting backstories or stories that develop over the course of the game. I'll give you one example. Marina Splatoon 2. I think the character design is awesome, right? She's an octoling. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so she has this sort of like tentacles that appear off her head, and she's a DJ in part of the duo that between her and Pearl that are sort of the replacement for the Squid Sisters from Splatoon 1. And they're very sassy, and they talk about the Splatfests and introduce you to the game as you start it up. It's just a phenomenal character. I really like how she looks. But other than that, that's really it.
And I think that like Splatoon 2 doesn't give enough like room for them to really shine, right? Like they're your announcers for like patch notes and for like the Splatfests. Exactly. And then outside of that, you don't really like, they're kind of like put away to the side, unlike the Squid Sisters in the first Splatoon,
right? Which
actually feature pretty heavily in Splatoon 2's single player campaign, which nobody really played. It's an interesting character design that I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't do more with.
Yeah, I agree with that. So for those reasons, I want to eliminate her. But I will give you another one of my favorites. I really like Failsafe in Destiny 2. Failsafe is a corrupted AI from a downed spaceship that Cade 6, who's also nominee on this list, basically crashed. So as she's being corrupted, you hear her sort of bipolar personality. And she just has really funny, clever lines written into a game that sort of lacks a lot of great funny lines. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of the reason why Failsafe stands out for me in Destiny 2. Speaking from a jump from Destiny 1, which I was not a huge fan of, Destiny 2 has a much more colorful and rich story that I thought within the campaign. Even though it's a little short, I still like how Failsafe shined through, for sure.
Again, the same thing with Failsafe as with Marina. I agree with you that Failsafe is probably the strongest character of the new characters that are introduced in Destiny 2. However, there are like probably 3 missions on that planet that you encounter in the single player campaign for, I mean, I know this is an MMO, like, sort of. And really the only other times you encounter Failsafe is like she becomes a vendor. And you may never encounter Failsafe again if you choose not to go back to that planet. And you really only get to see her personality shine in like 2 to 3 missions before she just kind of like goes away. Like a lot of the other characters who aren't the Guardian, Cade 6, I'm struggling to even come up Zavala. Yeah. I'm struggling to come up with their names because the characters in Destiny 2 are so forgettable.
Yeah. I mean, I see your point there.
I think for that reason, like, I agree that she's a strong character, but I think we have to cut her only because they don't flesh her out enough. Again, I'm not even sure why I read Cade 6. Cade 6 is not a unique character. He was in Destiny 1. I do agree that they kind of fleshed him out a little bit more. They gave him more to do, but, like, if he had a complete personality change, I could maybe like, or he maybe became like Cade 5 or something like that. That would be interesting. But more of Nathan Fillion like hogging screen time, not essentially all that new or exciting.
Okay, I didn't realize that he was in Destiny 1, to be honest with you. That's how forgettable Destiny 1 was for me.
Yeah.
So doesn't qualify for best new character for 2017.
What I do want to hear about are games I haven't played on this list. Who is Fane from Divinity 2?
Oh, Fane is awesome. Okay, so Divinity 2 is an RPG that is very, very similar to games like Baldur's Gate, where it's this sort of turn-based / active Dungeons and Dragons purist kind of a game, okay? And so Fane, what you get to do is you get to pick from a cast of characters, preset characters, and Fane is among them. However, if you choose not to play as Fane, you can recruit him through a side quest with any other character. Same applies with the rest of the cast of characters in Divinity 2 Original Sin. But Fane stands out for me because he has a really fascinating backstory. He is this undead creature. In Divinity 2 universe, he's called an Eternal. And what he's trying to understand is how he died, how he was resurrected, and what happened to the history of his people. Now that he's no longer human, now he's an undead. What happened to create the undead or the Eternal in Divinity 2? So this sort of journey that he takes is really, really interesting. And he's sort of he's voiced by a pretty snarky character, or a snarky voice actor, I should say. It's really, really, really fascinating how he grips between his human self, his former human self, and his undead self.
So is he like a skeleton man? What is he like a zombie? What
here's the other interesting part about him. He appears as like a skeleton, as an undead. However, if you decide to play as Fane, he immediately acquires masks that he can disguise himself as other races or even a human, so as not to disturb other humans, which are the main NPCs in the game, the main race in that game. So if you opt not to wear the mask, your choices within the game will be definitely affected. Humans will run away from you. They will start to engage you in combat very quickly because they run frightened from, a walking skeleton in front of them. But you can totally play the game as a disguised Fane, as different races, as he changes masks. So I think that's really, really interesting mechanic they've tied in from his story to the gameplay itself.
I think that's really cool that they incorporated an aspect of the lore like that into like gameplay mechanics where like, of course, if you see a walking skeleton around, you're going to be like freaked out and you might want to fight him or might want to run away. And I think it's really cool that he has lack for a better term, a fleshed out story, if you will. But I think that's a great argument for why he should be on this list. Definitely one of the three.
And the other thing is, even though I decided to play as Fane from the start, I understand that I actually looked this up. If you opt to recruit him as a side character, if you're playing as somebody else, you actually discover Fane trying to rip off the face off someone who just died. And he's trying to use, exactly. He's trying to use that face as a new mask. Like that's how he acquires disguises. Is he rips off the faces of other characters and wears them, and somehow that's like a passable disguise in the Divinity universe.
Okay,
it's just he's just a really interesting character to me.
Huh. That sounds very, very cool. That makes me like honestly want to play Divinity 2 more to have like characters like that in the game. All right.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about who's not going to be on this list if that's a bit easier. Talk to me about Trouser from Yooka-Laylee. The whole joke is that he's a snake and he's a trouser snake, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, see what they did there.
Does he have any like character moments or like dialogue that's just like really clever? Or
I mean, not really. It's first of all, I was not a huge fan of Yooka-Laylee. I just thought that was a clever name for a character and an obvious sexual innuendo. So right. I don't know. It's not anything too great. And the humor is very similar to Banjo-Kazooie, right? I mean, these are the same makers of Banjo-Kazooie. So I don't know. It's other than that, he's a trouser snake. Haha, isn't that funny? And that's about it.
It's like a one-note joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Makoto from Persona 5 is, first of all, best waifu, but she is the younger sister of the prosecutor who's basically... So in Persona 5, this happens in the first 10 minutes of the game, so it's not really a spoiler, but you discover that you've been jailed for your crimes against humanity, and then the story kind of happens in media res, and it kind of goes into like what happened, how the Phantom Thieves formed, and Makoto happens to be the sister of the prosecutor who's trying to like get you for your crimes. And she has a very interesting arc. She's this kind of like student president type person who's very smart and very like rule follower. And all of us, she has a very interesting way that she finds herself into your group. And her like persona is very like, it's this like badass, like think metal with spikes motorcycle that she just like rides around in. It's really, really cool. It's a really cool character design. And some of the dialogue choices that you have with her, if you decide to pursue her like side quest, it's super interesting. She plays very heavily in the game's like main plot line. It's just like a really good, well-rounded character all around. However, I will say that I do think there are characters that are better on this list that have better dialogue. So for that reason, I think I'm like, even though I chose her, I think I'm going to have to eliminate that from the list.
All right, no argument for me. Moving on, we have a few more left. We have Hestu from Zelda Breath of the Wild, Helix from ARMS, Rabbid Peach from Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Ruki from Pyre, Shriv from Star Wars Battlefront 2, Sigrun Engel from Wolfenstein 2, and Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2. So among those, who are you going to pine for?
Okay, I have two, and I think they're both from Wolfenstein. So Sigrun Engel is the newly introduced daughter of Frau Engel from the first game, The New Order. And she's kind of a heavy-set. She's a Nazi when she first starts out, and then all of a sudden, she's kind of a Nazi who's struggling with her identity. She doesn't really want to be a Nazi. She's really only a Nazi because her mother's a Nazi, and she
like all Nazis,
right? But it turns out that she is having some really conflicting feelings about her sexuality. She despises her mother because her mother is like doesn't want her to keep eating. And she's like kind of wrestling with her like familial emotions. And then all of a sudden she decides to like betray her mother and help you out. And so she helps Blazkowicz out of a jam, and then all of a sudden joins the resistance. But then like throughout the game, like she still has that like very loose Nazi association. And like people like all the characters basically treat her like shit. And
Sure.
It's like one of those things that she's like kind of discovering who she really is. She's not a Nazi, but she has this association, and she kind of like comes into her own by the end of the game, and is basically like, no, I'm not going to take this crap from everybody. Like, I am my own person. I am going to decide to help you on my own terms. And like, that's like very like an empowering character, and not one we often see. Like more often than not, when we see these like power fantasies in games, we don't see like real people. We don't see people who have these like they go from one side and turn to another. And I think Sigrun has a very powerful arc. So that for me, that's why she should be a contender.
And she has a sex scene.
Yeah, she does. She does have a sex scene, which like, you know, good on Wolfenstein for like going there, right? Like they have like characters in that game have real relationships and real struggles,
right?
And you know, Sigrun is definitely one of those characters. I can make similar arguments for Grace Walker. Grace Walker is she's kind of like the American leader of the resistance. And so in this game, you move the war theater from Europe to America, and you find that she's like kind of holed up in this bell tower, and she's this like
in New York City.
In New York City, she's this like Black Panther type figure, straight out of the 70s, looks like a blaxploitation character, huge afro, and just like, you know, shut up, sucker, that kind of talk.
Right. She's very sassy.
Very sassy. And so she's kind of, you know, the leader in the last game kind of dies very early in the first like hour of the game. And Grace kind of takes on the role of leading the resistance. She like, you know, gets on your submarine. She's like, all right, I'm the boss. I have all the plans. Let's do this. And she really like takes charge. And it's really like she has a lot of like interesting moments. She's like breastfeeding her child, and like the game goes there. Like her like partner is this guy who's this like conspiracy theorist, and she has to kind of deal with that. And you know, she has again another very interesting arc. And by the end of the game, you feel like, yeah, I could follow this woman to like the end of the earth. She's awesome
and a great foil to the Nazis who you're trying to kill, right? I mean, this is a black woman in power of the resistance, very powerful member that they can't seem to take down. She's always one step ahead of them and sort of leading the recon and intelligence initiatives on behalf of the character you play as, BJ Blazkowicz.
Right, and she's kind of like the brains of the operation, right?
Exactly.
Like, Blazkowicz is kind of the muscle, and if Anya is the heart, Grace is definitely the brain running that operation, and Grace is like a really incredible portrayal of that kind of character.
Right.
So for me, I think it's between those two. I don't know if you agree. Just to give the other characters their fair shot, Hestu is the character in Breath of the Wild who shakes his maracas when you give him a Korok seed.
Yep.
And he's a very fun and jolly character. A nice surprise if you find him, but not much more.
Very charming and cute.
Very, very charming character, but not much more than that.
Yeah.
Helix from ARMS is kind of this weird, like, DNA man who is, honestly, looking at him kind of creeps me out. And the less I think about him, the better. He's, I don't know, and ARMS doesn't really, like, do those characters in the single player have a story?
No, I tried ARMS at a Nintendo booth at the mall here, close to DC, and I just wasn't a fan in general, and I played these multiplayer matches, and I honestly didn't really like how Helix played. I mean, he just looks cool because he has these DNA strands for his arms, and he's this sort of globby amoeba. I don't know if there's a single player campaign. I highly doubt it, but I don't know that Helix would be a very interesting character anyway, so I can't speak to him really.
Okay, so Rapid Peach, I think, is on this list because she's surprising how much I like her. Yeah. Like, for this annoying right. character who looks like she takes selfies all the time, probably the best character in that game.
Yes.
However...
That's not saying much.
That's not saying much, and you're combining two characters that already exist. You're combining Rabbids and Princess Peach.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting take. I think her one quirk is very charming. It actually, like, the joke works throughout the entire game, I think. Mm-hmm. But they don't do a whole lot with the shtick.
Yeah, true. No dialogue.
Yeah. So, I mean, even without a character can work without dialogue. I just don't think they do enough with her slapstick to, like, really stand out. Yep. Ruki from Pyre. The characters in Pyre you might have specific attachments to. Ruki happened to be the one that I had the most attachment to, and he was one of the ones that I like. So in Pyre, man, explaining the concept of Pyre is going to sound so crazy, but here we go.
Didn't we talk about it in an earlier episode? But yeah, just give the Cliff Notes version.
The Cliff Notes version is basically you're a basketball team that it plays in hell, and in order to escape hell, you have to win basketball games, and at the end of every season, you have to send one of your three best players out from hell to be like nominated to be a candidate.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. So Ruki was one of the first ones that I sent out from hell because I felt he was very deserving. You have a very early on decision with him whether he should shave his mustache or not, and it's one of the more entertaining choices you make in the game. And then he like decides that character's design changes forever.
Yeah, as a dog.
You find out that he's like a merchant from the merchant class, and he like it was kind of like a deal gone wrong kind of situation, and his rival is this guy who kind of like despises him, and he turns out to have like a golden heart, and he's like a really fascinating character, but I don't think he holds a candle to some of these others, so I'm going to eliminate him. Talk to me about Shriv from Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Shriv is a new character to the Star Wars universe. You encounter him through the missions involving Lando Calrissian in the single-player campaign mode, and he's just a sassy alien sidekick. He's a scoundrel just like Lando, and they've been on many missions together, and they're constantly joking in the middle of the mission, hey, if I die, you're going down with me. Hey, and he just has some funny lines, and he's kind of a badass, and he features pretty prominently towards the last third of that game, I would say. And he's a great addition to the Star Wars universe, but I don't know if he'll have appearances in future Star Wars movies. But I really like how Star Wars canon through video games, there are some fascinating characters in general that get added all the time, and you can add Shriv to the list. Some of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time have exclusively been in video games only. Like, I'm thinking of several examples from Knights of the Old Republic. So, he's just another great addition, but yeah, I would have to see more of him to really get more invested and defending him. I don't know if he's top 3 from this year.
Okay, so then that leaves us with Sigrun or Grace from Wolfenstein 2. Taylor, who do you got?
My preference is Grace, only because I think she's a more powerful character. Sigrun has a great turn, in my opinion, from turning into this pathetic, overweight Nazi to redeeming herself and being a really interesting character. But I think Grace, however, has a much bigger impact on the story, and I just love how she's portrayed as this powerful black woman who's a mother at the same time in the middle of a war, and just how she keeps it together. And so she's sort of that Black Panther mentality. She just embodies that. She's such a foil to the Nazis that you're fighting that I think she's definitely worth recognizing.
I mean, they've already been on the record for saying that they're going to make a third game in this like trilogy, and of the characters in that game, I definitely want to see more of Grace. Definitely standout character from that game. So our three candidates are Pascal from Nier Automata, Fane from Divinity 2, and Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. So we have to pick a winner, Taylor. I know which way I'm leaning, and I think I'm leaning towards Pascal.
Yeah, I think so too. The thing about Fane, to his disadvantage, is if you decide to play as him, the way it works in this game is that you are choosing your own. It's like it's an RPG, right? You're choosing your own dialogue choices, responses to other NPCs, and if you do not, if you opt to select Fane and play as him, you really don't get to listen to his voice acting, which is really, really unfortunate. However, if you play as a different character and encounter him and try to recruit him, you do encounter his voice acting, which is this just really pretentious British guy, but it just works for this undead character. It really does.
So you really only encounter the character if you decide not to roleplay as him, and that's...
Well, I wouldn't say you encounter him, but you discover more about this character if you decide not to roleplay as him, because when you select a character, you roleplay as them, right? And sort of their actual side story is a little bit buried than unless you were to recruit them and then do their side quest. Does that make sense?
I see.
Yeah. So unfortunately to me, that's a bit of a disadvantage from him, and he's not the first undead character who acts human-like out there in video games. There have been others in the past, for sure, in many other genres. So
yeah, and I think Pascal's overall arc is like very tragic, and like no matter what you come to with Nier, Pascal is an immediately relatable character that just like tugs at your heartstrings the moment you meet her, from the moment you like stop encountering her in the game. It's just like what an incredible thing to have such an emotional response to that kind of character in games. So our winner for Best New Character of 2017 is Pascal from Nier Automata, with runners-up Fane from Divinity 2 Original Sin and Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. All right, let's move on, Taylor, to our next category, Best Gameplay Moment. Let's have you read the list of candidates.
Yes, for Best Gameplay Moment, the nominees are Getting a Chicken Dinner from PUBG, Ending E in Nier Automata, Pascal's Last Stand from Nier Automata, The Fourth Fight with Kuze from Yakuza 0, Majima's Jazzy Tutorial in Yakuza 0, Walking into the Mansion in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, Climbing and Overriding a Tall Neck in Horizon Zero Dawn, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine Mini-Boss from Sonic Mania, say that 10 times fast, Possessing Bowser in Super Mario Odyssey, Visiting the Mushroom Kingdom from also Super Mario Odyssey, The Return to Blazkowicz Farm from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, The Execution from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, The Audition, also in Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, one more, Drinking Hooch with Horton, also from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, Stealing Futaba's Heart in Persona 5, The Callus Reveal in Destiny 2, Heihachi's Last Stand in Tekken 7, Conquering a Boss That Seemed Impossible Before in Cuphead, and finally, Flying Through the Death Star Wreckage in Star Wars Battlefront 2. Huge list. I'm glad that you gave me that one, right? So many nominees. You made it hard for me, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but also, like, I feel like just you going through that list was already some spoilers. Okay, so there are a lot of incredible moments in these games. Obviously, a lot of incredible moments in Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. I'm going to ask you to pick one because I don't think we can get away from this category without picking a moment from Wolfenstein 2. So between the Return to the Blazkowicz Farm, The Execution, The Audition, and Drinking Hooch with Horton, which one of those would you nominate as our candidate from that game?
For me, it would have to be The Audition. All right. The Audition, that's an ambiguous name for that gameplay moment. Massive spoiler alert if you have not played Wolfenstein 2. The Audition is you as BJ Blazkowicz. You travel to Venus to audition for Adolf Hitler in person, who is alive in the Wolfenstein 2 timeline. You audition to play as the role of BJ Blazkowicz, or better known to the Nazis as the ultimate enemy to the Nazis in America. So you come in disguised as BJ Blazkowicz, auditioned for the role as BJ Blazkowicz, and you are face to face with Hitler. And part of the audition involves you getting into this booth, right, to audition in front of the director and Hitler himself, and read some dialogue lines, play out a scene with a Nazi soldier. You also have the interesting option to totally ignore Hitler and the director, and guess what? Kill Hitler on the spot right there. Now, that's an immediate checkpoint in that game. If you opt to do that, you instantly get killed and you got to load back. It's not a final or a different ending. Still awesome, really mind-blowing moment in Wolfenstein 2.
Yeah, and I think the depiction of Hitler as like this old man who's kind of like this creep, but also decrepit. He's like
senile, for
he's
sure.
He's like vomiting all over himself. He's drinking. He's like slurring his words. He's not making a whole lot of sense. It's just, you can tell that they really went out of their way to make him look as much of like an asshole as he probably, or actually he was a tremendous asshole, but like they go out of his way to like to make him appear just like a really like
person.
Off-brand Hugh Hefner, but just like way without the like smart, snarky, like he's just the worst.
Yeah.
I think that
it's Hitler.
I think that moment is incredible. I think for me, where that moment falls down is the part where they don't go far enough with it. I wish they would just let you just kill him, and then like that would have been an interesting like take on well, if you've killed Hitler now, what's going to be the enemy in the next Wolfenstein game, right? Like, we all know where this is going. We all know that, like, in the next game, probably the final enemy is going to be Hitler. He's probably going to be Mecha Hitler, just like in the original Wolfenstein. And, like, we're just waiting for that portrayal, right? But I do think this is like wow, they actually, like, not a lot of video games go there when they do World War II or, like, depict Nazis. And, like, Wolfenstein 2 has the gall to, like, actually show you what Hitler might have been in this kind of timeline. It's really something.
Well, we're not voting on what could have been, and I know you said I wish you could go further in this moment, but the audition is awesome. It really is cool. It's really funny how you're trying to memorize and reread those lines that are fed to you, and just being face to face with Hitler, shown as this really senile, pathetic old guy. It just is really, really, really great standout moment for me. Among many standout moments, obviously there were so many nominees we have from this game, and we should pick the one, and I think this is the best one.
Yeah. To speak to the other ones quickly, the Return to the Blazkowicz farm. So, like, you learn a bit about BJ's background. He has a very troubling childhood, abusive father, and so you eventually go back to your family home and to uncover all these memories. And then you, like, find your father there, like, sitting there waiting for you, being like, I can't believe the kind of person you turned into. You find out that your father has been, like, supporting the Nazis. You find out that he's actually, like, ratted you out and the Nazis are coming to the farm to kill you. And it's just, like, one of those things, like, returning to the scene of, like, massive childhood trauma. It's just like, wow, this game, like, was unafraid about that. It really, really impressive. I don't think it holds up to the audition. The execution is very interesting. It's kind of this, like, high sci-fi moment. So you get captured by the Nazis, and they kill you. They kill BJ Blazkowicz, and they do so, like, in this, like, on the National Mall, and they behead you. And you get to watch that in first person, which is, like, very disconcerting.
Oh yeah.
And then you watch your head basically fall, or BJ's head fall into the, like, his head gets chopped off and it gets thrown into a fiery pit. And then that happens, and then it shows
Twist.
You like a replay where your friends basically rescue your head midair, toss another head into the fire pit, the head of a random stranger
As a decoy, yeah.
Graft your head onto a, like, stolen super soldier body so that you can continue to live. And it's just like one of those things. It's just like, wow, my jaw literally hit the floor when that moment happened. I was just like, I can't believe they, like, Frankensteined him. I mean, I kind of can, because they've decided that BJ Blazkowicz has to be the hero of this game. But it's just like, wow, they actually, like, in the middle of the game, they kill the main character, and then they let him live.
You experienced the beheading in first person. It's wild, and you're like, what? Is this game over? Was that the ending? And then no, there's a whole nother half to the game, and you're like, wow, really? Did that just happen? I can't believe it. Yeah.
I think if the audition wasn't in this game, the execution would like run away with this category, no problem. The drinking hooch with Horton moment is the moment in the big political moment in the game, I think, besides the audition, where you meet a part of the resistance in New Orleans, and Horton is this like preacher character who's like been fighting the Nazis for all this time, and BJ Blazkowicz is just like, man, why haven't you been like standing up more for yourself? Because Horton is kind of this like Southern, like Confederate Dixie type figure. And BJ goes all the way in on him, being like, man, you're part of the reason why Nazis like exist, like because white people like you haven't like stood up to fight them in the past. And you like drink moonshine, you have this like basically really powerful political debate. And this is a like debate that we're having like in 2017 with, you know, the rise of fascism and you know, all sorts of bad political stuff that's been happening. People who've been unafraid to show their Nazi colors. And it's just like, wow, like a video game in 2017 not only depicted Hitler, not only killed the main character, on top of it, they like made a really big political statement. It was one of those things that I was just like, I was really impressed by that moment. And
agreed.
But I don't think it's quite as shocking as like meeting Hitler. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate all those moments and just leave the audition. I think that has to stay on this list. Let's talk about some other gameplay moments. Teo, talk to me about flying through the Death Star wreckage at Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah, it's not going to hold up with the rest of these nominees, but it's a really great moment. In Star Wars Battlefront 2, the single-player campaign, you play as the Inferno Squad. There are these 3 Imperial, let's call them elite forces, right? They're like the Green Berets of the Imperials. So they're sort of deadly spies, but this isn't a spoiler alert because if you watch the Star Wars movies, you know that the Death Star gets blown up not just once, but twice. And after the second time, after the encounter on the moon of Endor, you play through that moment as one of the missions in Battlefront 2. You are actually boots on the ground in Endor when they look up in the sky and they see the Death Star is blown up and they think all of their friends have all died in the wreckage. So what you do is you evacuate Endor, you leave, and you fly in your TIE fighter through the wreckage, just in awe and talking with your squad mates about what to do next, where to go. You sort of have this inner turmoil in your head about, you know, I can't believe this just happened. They're angry at the rebels, but they're also angry at the Imperials at the exact same time for falling for getting defeated yet again. Their super weapon just getting blown up in front of them. So it's just this really neat moment of having you fly through there, which is just not something that happens in the movies, right? You seeing that is just a really interesting perspective, and it also serves as the game's tutorial on how to fly as the TIE fighter, because the Star Wars Battlefront 2 modes where you're flying through space are just really, really great parts of the game. So that's why I wanted to nominate it, give it its due, but it's not going to hold up in the rest of this category.
All right, let's eliminate some of these that I think are easy eliminations. I don't think walking into the mansion in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is going to hold up. I think it's a very like creepy moment. It's very unsettling. It's you know, stranger in a strange land, but the strange land is a completely abandoned house. And then you find out that there's more to this house, and it plays out
the whole story.
much like you would expect, like a horror movie too. I think it's a cool thing to like bring back that feeling in Resident Evil to feel really scared and being alone and like not all that empowered. But compared to some of these other moments, I don't think so.
Yes, but have you tried walking into the mansion in VR? Because that's what I did, and it is terrifying walking into the dark abyss as soon as you walk in, because you're like, oh man, I know I shouldn't walk in here, but the rest of this game is in this mansion, and it is very scary experiencing that in VR. But yeah, you're right. It's not going to beat out some of these other ones.
Yeah, for same reason for climbing and overriding a tall neck in Horizon Zero Dawn. So basically that's your Assassin's Creed, climb up the towers and reveal the rest of the map. And I do think that's cool. I think that world building and world aspect of Horizon Zero Dawn is awesome looking, very, very visually compelling. However, the actual act of like doing that is just like, oh God, do I really have to do this again?
It
like,
is, yeah, I agree. It's annoying.
It was cool the first time, but after that, I was just like, I just felt like a huge chore.
Agreed.
So I think the reveal of the Dr. Robotnik Mean Bean Machine mini boss in Sonic Mania is a cool throwback. But the first time I played it, I got stuck in a progress bug, so I beat Robotnik playing Mean Bean Machine, and then it wouldn't let me progress.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that moment for me was a little bit more frustrating than like awesome. However, if that moment plays out as it should, you're kind of like, wow, they like Sonic Mania is already a huge throwback to the Sega Genesis Sonic games, the Sonic greats. And I think throwing in Mean Machine is like an acknowledgement that like all those other Sonic games like really happened and it's not just a fever dream. But
it's a fun, lighthearted moment and it's pretty unexpected, but yeah, it just comes and goes. It's very quick, but you're like, wow, I don't have to play a traditional Sonic boss. You know, it's not a platforming jump on their head and win after a couple hits. It's actually like, hey, why don't you go head to head against this AI and play a version of Puyo Puyo while you're at it? I thought that was really, really kind of neat. But yeah, it just comes and goes. You don't ever get to encounter that again in the rest of the game.
It would have been cooler if they forced you to play a level of Sonic Spinball.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, the rest of these I think are a little bit harder. Let me talk about the two Yakuza 0 moments because I know you didn't play all the way through Yakuza 0. So the argument for the fourth fight with Kuze. So Kuze is this like Yakuza is a game about Japanese mobsters, and spoilers for Yakuza 0. This is a really cool game. I think it's underrated. You need to check it out. It's awesome. So in this game, you play these two sides of the coin. One is this guy who's trying to he's in the mob, and then he forces himself out of the mob, and then he's still like trying to wiggle away from a lot of their like large tentacles in Japan. And Kuze is this guy who's this mob boss who's a tremendous jerk. And you fight him 4 times in that game. Actually, you fight him 5 times in that game. And every time he's just like the one time you fight him and you win against him and he's forced to cut off his own finger because that's like how you get dishonored in the Yakuza. The second time he ambushes you in the sewers. The third time, I don't even remember. He's just like a big jerk outside of he's waiting for you with like a mob of guys to fight you. The fourth time, you're like, all right, enough with this guy. Like he won't leave me alone. So this game's plot revolves around this little tiny area of Tokyo that is basically, it's like a land grab. It's a land war over these different factions, like including the mob, this real estate mogul, and these people who have actually inherited the land who don't really know what to do with it. And you end up getting entangled with the real estate mogul, and he has his reasons. And anyway, so you fight for the real estate mogul, and he gets captured, and it turns out that Kuze has captured him, and you eventually find them in this basement. Like the Yakuza are basically like beating up your boss, and he's just like beating the crap out of him. And Kuze like knows if he kills this guy, like he's gonna really piss you off. But instead, like one of his lackeys decides to kill the real estate mogul. And Yakuza like slaps him. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you shouldn't have done that." But then you stumble into the scene, and he's just like, "All right, maybe I can make this work for me. I'm just going to be like a tremendous dick about this." And then the boss fight starts with you like finally, like before he even has a chance to utter another sentence. Just like this whole time, you've been completely restrained. This like you've approached every situation with like demeanor and class. And instead of doing that, instead of giving him a chance to speak, you punch him across the face, and it's just like in slow-mo, and it's just like that guy really had it coming to him.
Satisfying, yeah.
It's very satisfying, and just like you just like, hell yeah, I'm into this. And it's this really like awesome moment in the entire game.
Is that the whole fight? Like you just instantly beat him?
No, you don't instantly beat him. That's how the fight starts. You punch him in the face, and he's just like, all right, well, I guess it's on now.
Oh, and come on. You built that whole thing up, and that's it? You just punch him in the face? Of course.
Well, you punch him in the face, and then you have a boss battle with him because of video games.
Oh,
but
come on. No, I can't, Ryan. I can't with that.
All right, fine. All right, the other moment is extremely... It's a cool moment. So Majima is the other side of the coin in that game. He's one of the 2 protagonists in Yakuza 0. And he's this kind of... he's the host of a gentleman's club. his tutorial, his combat tutorial is basically like a drunken rowdy customer is like getting kind of handsy with one of the hostesses. How you learn his like combat styles is basically like how to serve the customer without actually pissing him off. So like you
Wow.
learn how to dodge, you learn how to like throw a punch, but then at the end it's like you throw out a handkerchief. And it's just like this like really cool twist on a tutorial, but also like the entire time this like big band is playing and it's this really awesome music, and it just shows you how cool this character is. And he just like handles it with and by the end of the night, like he's basically resolved the like drunk that he agrees that the drunken guy is too drunk, but he gets the drunken guy to agree to like pay for drinks for the entire bar, and just by showing like how customer service works, and it's the combat tutorial. It's really That's awesome great. And completely unexpected. And like if you don't play Yakuza 0, I'd recommend actually watching the highlight on YouTube. It's like one of the really big standout moments in that game.
Okay, let's keep it on the list for now. I really enjoyed that story.
Okay. Okay. I think getting a chicken dinner, in terms, like a lot of these we've talked about are kind of more cutscene moments. Getting a chicken dinner is like one of the most satisfying things to do in PUBG. It's one of the most satisfying things to do in games this year, period. It's so hard to do. You are, put on this island with 100 other people, and you have to get a chicken dinner, you have to win. You have to be number one. And it's this like, it's a lot of tension, and I've never achieved it.
Oh, me neither. But let me say this, because I was not as impressed with PUBG as everyone made it out to be. Mm-hmm. It just is getting the chicken dinner, while satisfying because you're the last person standing. What is there beyond text on the screen that literally just says "winner, winner, chicken dinner"? Is there anything beyond that?
You get more currency to put on cosmetics that don't really make that much of a difference, and it's bragging rights.
Exactly. That's it. All it is a screenshot, and I don't think it holds up to the rest of these very fantastic creative story moments that we see in the rest of these nominees.
Yeah, and
I'm going to be a big downer on PUBG.
It would be no different if the screen said you win. You're right. It's just funny that it became kind of like a rally call for that game.
Yeah, true.
Okay, we have to pick one of these from Nier Automata, and it's going to be really hard. All right, ending E. Big spoilers for Nier if you haven't finished it. So there are 26 endings to Nier, of which 5 are real endings, A through E. They're all lettered. And ending E is the last mainline ending you get. Basically, what happens is there's a hacking minigame in Nier where you like hack into AI, and then you either control, destroy them, or what have you. And by the time that game ends, you've like played out all the main plot lines. The characters have done what they're going to do, and then you're presented with this screen of like, in order to save the timeline or save humanity or save yourself, you have to hack into the system. And like the two AI companions, because all the characters in this game are basically robots, are having this philosophical debate. And in ending E, you play this hacking minigame, and the credits play, and it turns into this like Super Smash Brothers, like shoot the credits in order to progress. But then all of a sudden, the credits like overwhelm you, and you keep losing, you keep dying, and eventually the game gives you an out. It says, "Okay, we'll send you some help to get you through this. Do you agree to this?" And then because you want to get through the rest of the game, you say yes. And then all of a sudden, like a bunch of spaceships help you out with the hacking minigame and help you defeat the credits. And then at the end, it reveals, after you've beaten the credits and you've had all these like ships helping you out, that the reason that you got help was that people sacrificed their save data for Nier in order to help you out. The only reason that you had any save data was because five brave other players decided to sacrifice their save data, decided to not play Nier anymore. By the way, if you want to help out the next person who gets to this point, you need to sacrifice your save data too.
Right.
And I want to let you know that if you decide not to, you are a monster, and I don't want to know you. So of course you select yes. Your save data, complete save data, everything. All your story progress.
But by that point, have you experienced all the endings, or supposedly have?
Well, you don't know that point is coming. If you've read ahead, you might know that's coming. And it's just this like very like meta level of thing on top of like you getting invested in these characters, invested in the story of like the game is addressing you as a player like breaking the fourth wall and saying, "Now wait a minute, this is the most you're going to go with this game."
Yeah,
most games you don't really go back to and play through a second time unless you're going for trophies, achievements, or whatever. This doesn't matter all that much. Do you really care that much about progress in order to like help another person out? And like it's just like one of those things. It's just like, wow, I've never been offered that kind of choice in games before.
Right,
this is incredible. So that's my argument for the moment. I could see it going, but I don't know. It was a super interesting choice.
That to me personally is a much bigger moment than Pascal's Last Stand, which we've talked about in the last category. So I would prefer to leave ending E for now among the our nominees left, but eliminate The Last Stand.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. All right. So possessing Bowser and visiting Mushroom Kingdom. So the last boss battle in Super Mario Odyssey, surprise, you go fight Bowser. And then spoilers for Mario Odyssey. Basically, what happens is, this entire time you're possessing other enemies with your hat, and you play as them. And then, in order to like escape like this situation that Bowser puts you in with Peach and Mario, to escape with all three characters intact, you throw your hat at Bowser, and you like put Princess Peach over your shoulder, and you like control Bowser.
Yeah,
and he has the Mario cap. He has this Mario cap on. He
has the mustache.
He has the mustache. And it's kind of cool. It's like supremely anime.
Yes. Oh yeah.
It's very empowering. The thing that detracts it from it a little bit for me is that like you've had the chance to play as Bowser in other games before. Not quite like this, but it's it's really something.
It was a huge surprise for sure. Yeah.
I think for me, I would pick visiting the Mushroom Kingdom as more of a like impactful moment. So after that, all that happens, this game is all about exploring different worlds, and you get to the Mushroom Kingdom. But the Mushroom Kingdom turns out is the same Mushroom Kingdom that it was in Super Mario 64.
It's awesome.
So it's this really neat nostalgic throwback that like plays well to like one of Nintendo's finest Mario games, and then you get to play in the Mushroom Kingdom from Mario 64 as like a new level. The Peach's castle is intact. You can swim in the moat. Yeah, Yoshi is there.
Yep.
It's incredible. It's one of those moments that's just like, wow, they hinted at their like nostalgic past in a really neat, innovative way that didn't feel like it was. I mean, it's kind of pandering, but it's like the pandering in the right way. It's not fan service, right?
It is. It's not a one-to-one recreation of the Mushroom Kingdom, right? Peach's Castle in Super Mario 64. They've added so much to it that it makes it wholly unique in a new way. I mean, you can drive around a scooter in it, right? You can do the normal possessing stuff that you could do throughout the course of the game. You could get up on the roof easily and run into Yoshi, right? You can go inside the castle still yet again. There's just a lot of neat Easter eggs in this. And you can jump into paintings. It's not something that you can do over the course of normal Super Mario Odyssey gameplay. And it's a ton of great, fantastic, nostalgic throwbacks to Super Mario 64. They're acknowledging that Odyssey is a direct inspiration from the standards that 64 had set. So I think it's an excellent moment. So maybe we keep it on the list for now. Let's run through the rest of these. We still have remaining stealing Futaba's heart in Persona 5, the Callus reveal in Destiny 2, Heihachi's Last Stand in Tekken 7, and conquering a boss that seemed impossible before in Cuphead. Let me say this about the Cuphead one, because I have high praise for Cuphead. We awarded it our best looking game in our last episode so far. However, you do that constantly in the course of the game, and you're like, wow, this is such a relief. I was able to beat this boss. That was so hard. It's a game that's intentionally difficult. But let's be honest, that's the entire game. And there's just too many of those moments. I just think at some point it gets watered down, and it's not going to hold up against the rest of these nominees. There's nothing story-wise in Cuphead that I think is really, really incredible and notable. It's the actual way you're experiencing the game, which is satisfying. I don't think it's the best gameplay moment of this year.
It does make you feel very empowering that you like figured out the boss's pattern and you like finally triumphed over it, right?
Right.
But I do think some of these other moments, I agree with you, stand out a little bit, just a little bit more. Let's talk about Tekken 7, boy, Tekken 7.
Yeah, that's really anime. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Tekken 7 is basically anime. So Tekken 7 really gets into the Heihachi Mishima like family storyline. It takes you a little bit through kind of like in the same way that Mortal Kombat X and the more recent Street Fighter games have like gone back into like the backstory of the characters. And so it goes into Heihachi's past a little bit. You play as him for the majority of that single player campaign, and at the end it culminates in this battle with your son, or Heihachi's son, I should say. And it's this really like anime, like you fight in the volcano, you're like on the last sliver of health, and you like continue to stand up. And like, mind you, his son is the devil. So the son is like, there's no chance that Heihachi's mortal. Like, he might be like a really strong old guy, really crazy, really like powerful CEO, but he's like, the man's gonna die. It's obvious.
Yeah.
So his son, it comes full circle. His son throws him into the volcano to end his life. And it's this incredible, like, wow, that really just happened. Heihachi is the face of the Tekken games. He's been in every single one of these. In fact, you can watch the cutscenes from every other Tekken game, including Tag Tournament and a lot of the other side games in the outside of the mainline Tekken numbered games. I can't believe Bandai Namco really went there. And like, I don't know what they're going to do with Tekken 8. I really hope they don't like resurrect him.
Oh no, they will for sure. He's a fan favorite. Come on now, they will bring him back.
Or put him in a robot suit. I hope that they leave Heihachi dead. But it's just like the gall to do that, to kill off basically your main protagonist, who's also kind of like a huge villain,
right,
but also the face of your game. It's just the gall to do that in the same way that you've been killing the other main character in that game. I was floored that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it needs to stay on this list just because it's so crazy.
Okay.
The Callus reveal in Destiny 2 is something you really only experience if you play through the entire raid, which I don't know that most Destiny 2 players will ever do. But what this reveal is, Callus is the last boss in the raid. He's this big, like, Bacchanalian, drunken guy who, over the course of the fight, reveals himself to be a robot, an android.
But he's the emperor of the Cabal, the race, the enemy race that you are up against in the Destiny 2 storyline.
Right.
Yeah.
So he reveals himself over the course of the boss fight to be a robot, and then you defeat him, and then he kind of like laughs at you as he's dying, saying, you'll never win. I can never perish. And then whatever, he like explodes. And then you go down into the elevator to get your group's final loot chest. And then what's revealed is that there's an entire factory of Calluses, an entire factory of robots waiting for you to come back when you come back to the raid, and waiting for other squads to come back to the raid. I think what's cool about that is they gave like a really interesting lore relevant moment for you to come back to the raid, and a justification for why Callus is going to continue to exist. I think that's why it's cool. However, again, most people are not going to encounter it if they don't ever experience the raid. And on top of it, like, so that happens, and then you encounter Callus again, and then you see that moment again, and it has less impact the second or third time if you decide to go back into the raid.
Well, the first time it was predictable for me. I saw that coming. Based on what he's taunting at you in the final battle. He's taunting you leading up to it. And you just know that, well, I've defeated this raid, but I'm encountering all these other Cabal enemies throughout the course of the Destiny 2 grind. And you just see it coming. You're like, oh, okay, so he's immortal, or, he's multiple bodies. And that's exactly what happened there, is that you just have multiple robots. I saw it coming from a mile away, to be honest with you. But it's still kind of a neat visual moment where you open that loot chest and you're just looking into an endless conveyor line of these empty shell of bodies that look like Callus, waiting to be prepped and replace the one that just died from your squad of Guardians.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about stealing Futaba's heart from Persona 5. I think that's more of a cool moment, cool level in that game than it is really a standout moment. I think there are a lot of interesting cutscenes in that game. I think Futaba is like the hacker character. She's kind of like your kid sister a little bit, plays a little bit off of that anime trope. But spoilers for Persona 5, you find out that she is kind of disconnected from the world because her mother died, and her mother, it appears as if she killed herself. She like ran herself in front of a car. And this is all depicted, by the way, in like Egyptian hieroglyphs, and you kind of like unpack that throughout the level. And it's the first time in the Persona 5 story where you're not stealing like a bad guy's heart, you're stealing somebody who's just kind of conflicted. And I think that's a really neat twist on the whole mechanic and basically plot MacGuffin that for the Phantom Thieves to exist. But eventually you find out the real reasons for why she died. It kind of plays into the main storyline. And the final boss of that area is you fight a chimera-like version of her mother. And, Futaba has this realization that she can't keep carrying this burden on, and she opens up her heart to the possibility of new friends and new family and all that. Emotional for sure. I don't, compared to some of these other really crazy things that happened in video games this year, I don't know that it stands up. So I'm going to go ahead and self-eliminate that. So from the remaining ones, I'm sorry, Taylor, I've already put ending E because I think it has to be on here.
Sure, no problem.
The remaining choices are Majima's Jazzy Tutorial, Visiting the Mushroom Kingdom, or Heihachi's Last Stand. Which one of those have we built a compelling argument for?
This is a really strong category this year. Just a lot of nominees. I love talking about these kinds of things. And yeah, you skipped over the audition. We have that as a lock right now, the audition with Wolfenstein 2. So ending E in Nier Automata and the audition from Wolfenstein 2 are our locks. And among the remaining three, you really sold me on the Majima's Jazzy Tutorial. I think that's a really clever way of introducing that character and how to play as him. I think that's really hysterical. Visiting the Mushroom Kingdom for me in Super Mario Odyssey was like, wow, it's a super nostalgia piece. But it's short-lived because in Super Mario Odyssey, there are so many moons to collect in that game. There's just an enormous amount, and you just kind of get buried in it. I felt a little overwhelmed by the time I reached the Mushroom Kingdom, that I kind of saw it, and then I thought, I think I'm done with this. I don't know that I want to explore this too much. I've been here before, and so I don't know. I feel bad for eliminating it, but yeah, I thought the Mushroom Kingdom was just a little bit shallow for me.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those very naked panders. It's like, look, man, we're Nintendo. You get it. This is a Mario game, and if they do it again, this moment is going to have even less impact. And it's going to be very cynical, I think.
Yeah.
I do think in Mario Odyssey, it's a cool moment. It's a cool throwback. But that's kind of Nintendo's whole thing, man.
Yeah,
that's
the whole appeal. Agreed.
They're trying to get a new audience while keeping the players who were 10 when Super Mario 64 was first around. So, Heihachi's Last Stand, while incredible and incredibly anime, it's just too. I think Majima is way more over the top than that moment. It's
sure.
You should definitely watch the YouTube replay of the Heihachi's final moments. It's really something special.
I've never really been a huge Tekken fan in general, so I don't really have strong ties to Heihachi. He wasn't one of my favorite characters anyway in the roster. So I mean, it's great as a story piece for any fighting games. I totally endorse really great storylines and shocking moments. I think that's awesome. But I don't know. I'm just not a huge Tekken fan. So we have here remaining left are ending E from Nier Automata, Majima's Jazzy Tutorial from Yakuza 0, and the audition from Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. That last one for me is the lock. I really loved that face-to-face moment with Hitler. And I will give another spoiler alert for this because that's a giant one in the story. What happens is, as BJ Blazkowicz, you're being fed these lines. You're like, I'm a pathetic hero, and the lines tell you to get beat up by this Nazi super soldier. Instead, you just straight up beat the crap out of him in front of Hitler and the director. And Hitler you're auditioning in front of other actors, right? And the other actors are blown away by your performance, that you just literally killed this guy you're supposed to be rehearsing with. And Hitler loves it. He loves your performance. He can't believe that he's casting the guy to play as BJ Blazkowicz, and it's really the real BJ Blazkowicz in disguise. I think that's a really great moment that really is a great climax to the rest of the game. I think that's a phenomenal set piece for Wolfenstein 2.
I do think it's an incredible set piece. But there are just parts of that I feel very conflicted about. For one thing, I mean, not to be this is not a very accurate historical representation of all that has happened, because
duh, it's
in
Wolfenstein, Ryan.
In Wolfenstein, there's a lot of crazy over the top things, like there's a lot of Jewish mysticism, and the Dat Yehud are not a real faction in any way, shape, or form. Like the portrayal of Hitler, while I applaud that they have the gall to do that, I not to be that guy, but if they were going to go there, I do wish that they had just had the gall to just let you kill Hitler and move on. And like, that would have really said something to be like, okay, we hate Hitler. Just let me kill Hitler. And you guys, developers, if you're going to continue this franchise, you need to figure out who's more evil than Hitler. And that would be a really interesting, compelling game that you could make out of that. Like, who is your foil once Hitler is dead, right?
I said before, this is not to nominate what the story could have been. We're talking about the best moment in this year. So, okay, I see your point.
However, for me, I think it's between Majima's Jazzy Tutorial and this. I do think the neat part about it is that unlike the rest of the game, it actually offers you a choice to resolve a situation without killing anybody, right? The way you interact with the world in Wolfenstein 2 is you point a gun and you shoot at it, or you talk to NPCs who give you quest lines, right? And in this moment, they allow you to make a dialogue choice to either read the script as you remember it, or like to completely muck it up. And, if you muck it up, Hitler kills you right there and then. If you decide, like, on your way to the audition booth to, like, kick Hitler and stomp his face in, the game kills you. If you have to play that scene out to impress Hitler in order to, like, pass as BJ Blazkowicz, even though you are BJ Blazkowicz, in order to, like, get this role in this, like, Nazi propaganda film. And then it's this whole, it's like this comedy of errors, but also this really, like, wow, I can't believe that Hitler is, like, on top of already being an unsettling figure, he's even more unsettling in this portrayal, because at any moment he could just decide to, like, oh, that's it. And he kills, like, off some of the other actors who just don't cut the mustard. So
I'm hearing a compelling case for that one.
Yeah, all right, I'll give it to you. I think Majima's Jazzy Tutorial is really, really cool. It's not going to win, but I recommend you check it out. Check it out on YouTube. All right. So our winner for Best Gameplay Moment of 2017 is The Audition from Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, with runners-up Ending E of Nier Automata and Majima's Jazzy Tutorial from Yakuza 0. Whew. What a year. What a year.
What a great category. And yeah, I mean, that is a really special moment, I will say, as the runner-up for Nier Automata as well. I think we gave it its due, but that's a really awesome, fascinating choice that you don't see in video games too often. And I think that's really, really great. And it assumes that you are completely done with the game. You do not want to replay it. You've run into the endings that you wanted to run into, and you opt to help out future people who get to that point. I think that's a really, really great set piece from Nier.
I agree. All right, so let's move on to our next category, Best Music. So for this category, we're going to name the game, and then we're also going to play a quick sampling of what we think is the best song from that game's soundtrack. And I want to clarify that for this category, we're only choosing from games that have original soundtracks, not games that have licensed soundtracks. So from this list, Persona 5, the song we picked was Last Surprise. Let's play that clip. Nier Automata, Birth of a Wish, the Become God vocals version. Sonic Mania, Studiopolis Zone Act 1, Lights, Camera, Action. Next Machina, let's hear Cosmic Hero. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Peach's Castle. And finally, the music of Super Mario Odyssey, with the standout being Jump Up Superstar.
Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah! It's time to jump up in the air.
All right, Taylor, our listeners have just heard some samples of these incredible songs from a lot of these great games this year. Who do you got? I
love Sonic Mania. Got to throw my hat into the ring. We have to give it its due. I mean, I think that's an excellent, excellent original soundtrack. The first two zones of that game do have, the Green Hill Zone and the Chemical Plant Zone. Those are just remix tracks of the originals. However, the rest of the game are all original tracks that are fantastic. And the standout one that we played is really, really one of the best, one of my favorites personally. And it's a great tone. It's a zone where it's this TV/casino theme to it, blended with a bit of Hollywood in there. And it's just phenomenal. Like really, it just ties in really, really well to that zone's theme. I think it's excellent. And it's really just one highlight among a lot of highlights from Sonic Mania.
I think for this category, another thing we have to consider is if the music really makes the gameplay better. And I think in Sonic Mania, this zone's music really adds to the effect. I think this is probably the best level in the entire game, and the music plays a really big part in that. So, okay, I would put it as one of our three locks for this category. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate Cosmic Hero from Nex Machina. I think while the music from Nex Machina is really, really awesome, it is kind of a throwback to that like 90s arcade Robotron stylings.
Yeah.
The Cosmic Hero is the music that plays in the main menu, and it's the song that's kind of like the earworm. It won't go out of your head, but it's essentially like a techno song, that's been, if I'm being honest, done in better places in games before. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate it from the list. These are some very strong contenders, even though they're very few. Okay, I'm going to make the argument against Jump Up Superstar and Super Mario Odyssey. I think the music of Super Mario Odyssey is incredible, and I think the standout definitely is Jump Up Superstar. It's the song that they played in the trailer. It like everybody kind of like knows the words to it. It's a very like singable song, but it's kind of the only one that really like I think a lot of the music I think a lot of the music in Super Mario Odyssey is very lighthearted, very like level appropriate. The moment in the game where you Jump Up Superstar comes up is a neat throwback to the original Donkey Kong and a neat throwback to like 1980s Mario games. But the rest of the soundtrack doesn't hold up. I
agree.
And I'm going to be listening to that song on repeat on YouTube forever, but, that's probably the only one.
Yeah, you're right. The rest of the music in Super Mario Odyssey, I think, is not as memorable. So I can't really recall another track. I couldn't even hum it out, to be honest with you, from the rest of the game. So I just think that this category has to take into consideration the whole package, the whole soundtrack, and not just the samples that we played. So I agree with you.
Okay. For that same reason, I think we also need to eliminate Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle Peach's Castle. I do think so. This soundtrack is by Grant Kirkhope, who was the original composer for Banjo-Kazooie. Like incredible that they were able to get him.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting melding of his personal stylings and also neat twists on original Mario music. Peach's Castle is definitely a standout, but the rest of the music in that game,
it's really in the background for me. It just is great background music. There's so much action happening in that game, a lot of great sound effects, a lot of great visuals, but for me, it's sort of there. And Grant Kirkhope has a great style with, you hear flutes all the time. He loves the heavy use of flutes. It's very orchestral and light, and there's a lot of build up, and he does a great job at sort of setting the tone for what you're seeing on screen. But in the end, to me, it's sort of similar to a lot of his past work.
Right. And it's not all that original. I think that's kind of like what you want out of Grant Kirkhope thing is a thing that a score that really throws back to his like greatest hits, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, a lot of games in that genre, but doesn't play to like the songs in this game could basically be in a Banjo-Kazooie, 3D style platformer, and that's not the thing that we're going for. While it's highly appropriate, I don't think it deserves to be on this list necessarily of the 3 best soundtracks of this year. So that leaves Persona 5, Nier Automata, and Sonic Mania as our 3 candidates because they're the last ones remaining. And of these, we have to pick a winner, Taylor. And boy, howdy, do we have a hard job.
Look, Persona 5, Ryan, I mean, the game is super anime. The music is super anime.
But okay, the argument for Persona 5, I think, is that game has 2 main selling points. The one we've already awarded another category, style, right? That game's UI is incredible. It's really comic book art, graphical filter. But the argument for the music is that a lot of the music, independent of gameplay, is incredible, incredibly listenable. It builds on the legacy of other Persona games. Like Persona 4 had an incredible soundtrack, and Persona 5 like layers on top of it and just like ascends the throne. It's like the new top tier in Persona games. Like even the like slow mellow songs are really, really fantastic. And you can't say that a lot about the JRPGs because Persona 5 is a JRPG. Like typically there are like 1 or 2 songs that are kind of like, oh yeah, I could kind of like bop my head to this. And on top of it, the music in this game really, really adds to the like gameplay effect. It really feels like a very cool soundtrack, which is what they're going for. It's incredible.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for now, but sell me on why you think Nier Automata should win.
So, Nier Automata is more an argument for like music for music's sake. A lot of the pieces in Nier Automata's soundtrack are very orchestral, very appropriate. They kind of like build on each other. The argument against it is that I think there are too many songs on that soundtrack that are that Birth of Wish song that we just played has like 3 different versions of it. The best one, which was the one that we played, plays as you kind of find this like robot religious cult that is all about sacrificing themselves, and it's this really like creepy, like you have to escape from the cult moment. And this like swelling music, it feels very tense. You can feel goosebumps, and like the music really adds to the dramatic tension in that game every time it plays. But I think there are tracks on that soundtrack that aren't as effective. Like the song that plays in the desert area of that game, not as good.
Boring. I agree. There are a lot of like when you're just wandering around outside of cutscenes, outside of the climactic moments in that game, are so forgettable. I think that those pieces of that soundtrack are very forgettable in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if there were like a best music technical execution, I think Nier Automata would run away with it because I think they do a lot of interesting things like with voices, kids' voices, orchestral pieces.
Yeah, operatic stuff in there.
Yeah, that you sometimes see in games, but not done at this like production level. But this is not that category. This is best music, period. And if it's between Persona 5 and Sonic Mania, Taylor, I'm sorry. Like Sonic Mania, while that one track is very neat and a neat throwback, like they're building off of your nostalgia for Sonic, and a lot of those songs, like, it's very chiptune-y. It's very like just like the argument for Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, besides Studiopolis, I don't think it's all that original.
Oh man, I disagree with you, but I'm not so much of a hardcore Sonic fan because I'm definitely not that I would defend it to the end. And I do think Persona 5 is a very, very, very strong soundtrack. It just really complements the incredible, incredible unique style that it has. I agree with you. Okay. So Sonic Mania, though, you have to give it its due. It is an original soundtrack. Yes, there are some parts that are derivative. Some of them are just remixes of the original Sonic games from the Genesis. And the bonus stages, same concept, right? You know, it's borrowing from the same music as well. So for those reasons, you know, it's awesome to listen to independently of you playing the game. I think it's a really listenable soundtrack. But Persona 5 is in a class of its own, so I agree with you that it can win our best music of 2017. So to recap, Persona 5 wins best music of 2017 with runners-up Nier Automata and Sonic Mania.
All right, let's move on to our next category, biggest/most important news story. This is a long list, and before I read this list of candidates, I just want to give this category this caveat. we're talking about stories that have a lot of impact in the world of gaming, not just stories that made us feel a certain way. This also has, considerations for future things that might happen in gaming next year that we report on or other outlets report on. So keep that in mind as we read this list of candidates. So the SNES Classic is released. Japanese games make a critical comeback with the examples of Nier Automata, Resident Evil 7, Yakuza 0, Persona 5, Breath of the Wild. GameStop's Circle of Life sales program is exposed. Oculus loses the lawsuit against ZeniMax over VR tech. The Xbox One X is announced and released. Square Enix dumps IO. IO saves Hitman by going independent. E3 2017 opens to the public. EA acquires Titanfall developer Respawn. Nintendo shuts down the Miiverse. Lootbox outrage boils over. Nintendo recovers financially with the Switch's release. So these are kind of the top headlines I was reading. I can see some on here that might have an impact down the road. Some big stories that happened for sure this year. Taylor, what do you think of this category?
For me, I think the runaway winner is the loot box outrage boiling over. I know this is a bit of a recency bias here because we've been talking about that lately with some very, very high-profile games like Star Wars Battlefront 2, but we've been dealing with this kind of thing for a long time in games, and I think people are fed up with it. And it's really shown with the sales numbers of recent games that have included a lot of these loot box problems where you're getting gameplay advantages and randomized rewards for games that are already full price. Some other examples like Middle-earth, Shadow of War have these, and this is really a watershed moment at this point. There's no turning back right now, and I think you're going to see a lot more full-price AAA developed games have less and less and less microtransactions and loot boxes as well, because I think people are really, as they say in politics, they're voting with their dollars. I think you're seeing that start to happen with video games now in general.
Well, and on top of it, they've been talking about regulating it, right? Like there are multiple governments, multiple politicians now who are like, this might be gambling.
Yeah, we should investigate it exactly and regulate it.
Right, and it's one of those things that I'm sure a game developer, like when EA found out that senator from Hawaii was, or I'm not sure if he was a senator or representative, but anyway, that somebody from a U.S. politician was potentially going to investigate this. They pulled the loot boxes from Star Wars Battlefront 2. And it's just one of those things that can have a huge impact on the industry. The industry has to kind of figure out how it's going to pay its developers, how it's going to reward players for like buying their games, how it's going to this is like the golden horse armor moment, just like that was in 2007, the last time we had a big conversation about what DLC means, what expansions mean, how do we get more money from the consumer in order to support the development of these games. And this loot box conversation is going to continue to be an issue. How our publisher is going to justify their business decisions with these games when people don't want these microtransactions, don't want to feel like they're being cheated out of like their gameplay dollar. It's something that's going to be long, complicated, and like you have not heard the last of this loot box outrage for sure. I agree with you. It has to win the biggest, most important news story from this. So let's pick the two other candidates. There are a lot of big news stories on this list.
I don't want to labor over this category too much because we've already picked our winner. We're just choosing two runners up. I think for me, one runner up must be that Nintendo recovers financially with the Switch release. That was a major, major announcement, a release within this year. They are hitting record sales numbers so far, in pace with the Nintendo Wii, their runaway success. It's already about to beat the lifetime sales of the Wii U, which is tremendous for the very short amount of time that the Switch has been out. It's been a phenomenal critical success as well. Me personally, I am reinvigorated my fandom for Nintendo. I mean, the Switch is just a phenomenal platform that I would prefer to play all my games on because of how convenient it is. I really do think it's a really tremendous, tremendous success in contrast to what kind of a failure the Wii U was. So I think we do have to acknowledge it as a major, major story from this year.
And what a turnaround for Nintendo, right? Like the Wii U was just such a colossal mulligan for them that we didn't know that, Weird Nintendo it has to figure this out. And back against the wall, they did with the Switch. And it's one of those things that because Nintendo has now recovered financially, you're going to see a lot more independent developers, a lot more third-party stuff on the Switch because people have decided that it's going to be a viable platform. So Nintendo is going to continue to support this thing. I think that's really, really awesome. A healthy Nintendo, as I've said before, is healthy for the entire games industry. And them recover financially is just like... It's awesome. I think you might have heard me say before the Switch's release, I was just like, I'm not sure about this. It kind of depends on the software. And like they've delivered on that front too.
Oh yeah.
It's financially the Switch has just been like, they sold more copies of Breath of the Wild than there are consoles out there. Like that to me says it all right there. It's really amazing. Okay, so I think the ones that we can safely eliminate, I think GameStop Circle of Life sales program being exposed was one of those things that like we all kind of knew it was happening.
Not shocking.
Not shocking. You know, put your tinfoil hat on. Surprise, GameStop, a company with poor business practices, has a poor business practice. Oculus losing the lawsuit against ZeniMax over VR tech, I think would have been a bigger story any other year, but VR kind of floundered this year, and if that had more of a financial impact on the Oculus Rift, I think that would have been a bigger deal. But I think that kind of happened, was a drop in the bucket, and then everybody kind of like moved on. Like the parties settled, got their money, and it's whatever. Same thing for Square Enix dumping IO saving Hitman.
That's a crazy story, though, isn't it?
It is a crazy story, but it's one of those things where. Like nobody, come on! Another financial backer was going to come save Hitman after their financial. Like Hitman
it's a major franchise. Oh, yeah.
Hitman was an amazing game from last year, and like somebody was going to make a sequel to that game, and I'm glad the developer like sort of saved themselves. It's so unheard of in games for that to happen, but doesn't have an impact really outside of that developer or that franchise. I don't think. E3 2017 opening to the public, noteworthy for sure. They're going to continue to do that because I think it was kind of a success. The public finally getting to go to E3, this big game show that's been a games industry insider thing for so long. But, it's also represents the decline of E3 overall now that it's finally opening up to the public. Finally, we get access and it might stop becoming a thing. We're all just like watching it on live streams. Yeah. And it's, you don't have to fly to LA anymore to see the like new video games that are coming up in the next year.
And on top of that, in the past, parts of E3 have been open to the public before in some way, shape, or form, in some capacity. Not completely open, but somewhat open. So, I don't know, it's not that huge of a deal. I think the reason why they've opened it to the public is that they may be struggling financially as they see more and more companies pull out of the show completely because it just is so cost prohibitive, and they can target their audience just through their own live streams like Nintendo has been doing, hosting their own streams at any time during the year. It doesn't have to be just an annual thing to make major announcements. And I think that's the way the industry is going. So I think E3 has less and less of an impact as the years go on. And it used to be this fairy tale, mythical trade show that everyone wanted to get into, even those outside the press. And now that we're in the press, Ryan, wouldn't you have to go back and look and tell your kid self, E3 is really not that big of a deal anymore, because that's the reality right now.
Right. I agree with you. It can safely come off this list. I think that EA acquires Titanfall developer Respawn is such a crazy story because considering the history of that developer. So Respawn, if you don't know, Respawn kind of formed off the back of their two head guys jumping off the Call of Duty franchise, right? They're getting away from Activision Blizzard, who owns the Call of Duty franchise. They form their own independent studio because they don't like Activision. There's a lawsuit involved. Vince Zampella, and I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, so they form their own independent studio. They make Titanfall. They make Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is a bit more critical and financial success for them. And then EA, because of their success, they go right into the lap of one of video games' biggest publishers. They jump from Activision right back into EA. And that's interesting, particularly this year, because EA has been closing. EA has a bad track record with independent game studios, right? They acquire a game studio, and then all of a sudden, the game studio may or may not make another game, and then EA shuts it down.
Yeah, because they swallow up the talent and put them on different projects.
Right. So it's very interesting that Respawn is going this route with EA's graveyard of independent game studios.
That's the reason why I don't think it's a huge, important news story this year, because this happens all the time over the years with EA as a giant publisher.
Right. What's interesting about it is, like, will Respawn, these like fiercely independent development studio, like fall into the same trap that a lot of these other studios have fallen into? And
the
like,
answer is yes.
If I'm shaking the magic 8 ball, all signs point to yes.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate it. I don't think Nintendo shuts down Miiverse is a huge deal. When that story happened, I'm glad we reported it. But at the same time, I was kind of like, okay, Miiverse was neat, but shrug.
Interesting experiment, but totally replaced by social media.
I agree. That Nintendo of all companies decided to like do one of gaming's biggest social media things is kind of interesting, but it was never going to last forever. Nintendo was not going to moderate that community all that well, and it was getting to be kind of gnarly in there. So let's just cut it. The SNES Classic being announced, a big news story. Kind of could see that coming a mile away when they discontinued the NES Classic. They were like, we all heard rumors that they were going to spin up the factories to the SNES, and we're like, oh, okay, fine, they're going the nostalgia route. And then they did. Again, it contributes to Nintendo's financial success. Not all that surprising. So I think the last remaining standing thing is the Xbox One X being announced and released. A big deal for Microsoft for sure. It's kind of a turning point in the story of the Xbox One. They've released the most powerful console ever, right? And this is kind of their last stand, I think. The Xbox ecosystem, for lack of a better term, is becoming more and more like the PC. They're releasing a lot of their first-party efforts on the PC. And, for people who are bought into that fandom and their ecosystem and what have you, like, this is it. Like, this is their 4K ready HDR, like their big push, their PS4 Pro push. What happens from here is kind of anything can happen, right? Either Microsoft succeeds with the Xbox One X, continues to be a games company, moves forward, or the other alternative is they decide to spin off their games division and never touch Xbox ever again.
Exactly. I think the Xbox One X is going to have a huge impact. Whether or not it's successful is yet to be seen, but I think it's a huge, huge promise. There's still a market for people who do want high-powered consoles and do not want to mess with the hassles of the PC platform. I get that. But depending on how well the Xbox One X performs financially for Microsoft, we will see. I mean, it's a huge, huge turning point. We'll stay tuned and monitor them for the next couple of years, but it could go really, really either way. It's really hard to tell. It will boil down to the software and games they make available for it. It is a huge, huge story from this year.
Yeah, and I will just say one last bit about this story. I do wish they had stuck with the Project Scorpio name. That was such a cooler name. I know names are not that big of a deal, but now we have a bunch of people who are confused about whether you're buying the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, which was the last revision, or the Xbox One X, which is the thing you probably want if you're going for the high-end Xbox.
Yep.
It's why did they do this? They didn't have to do this.
They pulled a Wii and Wii U marketing mistake. It's terrible, terrible name.
Name it the Xbox One Elite. Do something else. It's just X and S sound too similar.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind. Anyway, so the winner from this category for the biggest, most important news story is Loot Box Outrage boils over, with the other candidate headlines runners-up: Xbox One X being announced and released, and Nintendo recovering financially with the Switch release. All right, Taylor, we've made it. We've made it to our final category for this part of our Game of the Year deliberations. Worst trend. This is another fun category, another set of fun headlines. So let me read you the list of worst trends that we don't want to see come back next year or in any year from here on out. Bubsy returning. Bubsy is back, baby. Alternate title, long dead IP being revived because there are no new ideas in games. VR software failing to reach critical mass. Nostalgic micro consoles, with the example of this SNES Classic, the Atari Box, the Sega Genesis Flashback, the C64 Mini. Nintendo's ongoing supply shortages, with the NES Classic, the Amiibo, the SNES Classic, and the Switch. Loot boxes in full-price AAA games. Injustice 2, Middle-earth Shadow of War, Forza Motorsport 7, Star Wars Battlefront 2. These were all the worst offenders in this category. Misleading marketing of early access games. Fortnite. PUBG's exclusive console version, a bunch of other examples that I could name off of, but those are probably the two big standouts. Toxicity in games continuing to persist. Destiny 2's Keck item. PewDiePie losing Disney's deal over anti-Semitism. Blizzard finally addressing their reporting system that they've ignored for so long. A number of other examples. Games copying PUBG with Battle Royale modes. GTA Online did this. Fortnite did this. Counter-Strike is probably going to be doing this. Microsoft's first-party development continuing to flounder with the Crackdown 3 delay and Forza Motorsport 7 being the last major Xbox exclusive for 2017. And finally, the last headline in this category, microtransaction success means more games will get them in the future. We saw some numbers from Take-Two and EA's recurrent consumer spending revenue sheets. There's some really bad things happening in video games for as good of a year as it's been. Let's pick some winners that are really losers in this category.
Yeah, I really hate this trend of early access games. I hate the concept of early access games fundamentally. I get why developers want to do it. I get why gamers want them. I personally hate them. I rarely buy into any games that are in early access because I don't like being tied into putting money down for a game that is incomplete. Some of these builds are alpha builds. They're awful. And Kickstarter campaigns are built upon these early access experiences, and it's only getting worse. I think it's really annoying. I think it's a crutch for a lot of developers, and I really hate to see it getting worse and worse.
Well, okay, here's the argument against that. At this point, every game that gets released these days is an early access game, even if it hits 1.0 or goes gold, right? Like, you see games that are fully AAA, come on disc products that are incomplete, and then they get day one patches. And every game is an early access game. So this is you basically saying that you hate that we've created a system now where we have patches that potentially could make games better, but because of the state of development, things released super hot off the line. Now we have even a subcategory of games that even before we get to the point where it gets to day one and it gets to be released on disc, gets to be a retail product in store shelves. Now we have games that are in a state where you get to be a part of the development process, and you, as somebody who might be investing in the early access program, might have some say or some sway on how a game gets developed. I agree with you that there are bad examples. There are some pretty awful offenders of the early access moniker. The examples that you hold up here, Fortnite and PUBG, are like PUBG was an incredible game, even like when it got first released in February, and it made the case for itself. And now it's a 1.0 thing, and it's still kind of broken. But all games are kind of broken these days.
Yes, okay, but let me clarify. Okay, sorry. The worst trend here, the headline we have as a nominee, is the misleading marketing of early access games. So let me put it to you this way: the example of Fortnite. Okay, Fortnite is a game, right? It's a third-person sort of, almost like a tower defense horde-style multiplayer online game. Now, what they've decided to do, Epic Games has decided to publish this game on disc, right, for the PS4, but it's also available on PC. Is it available for Xbox One? I'm not sure. But
I believe so.
I think you're right. I think it is too. The disc-based versions of this game, this Fortnite is in early access. How do you sell a game in stores in a box and bury the lead? Early access is not on the front of this case. And it is just not obvious to the average consumer. And I think that's really, really horrible. You have to make it obvious it's an early access. And I wish it were up to the publisher. If I were Sony, if I were Nintendo, if I were Xbox, if I were Microsoft, I would never put a game that is fully known to be in early access on disc. It sets a really, really poor expectation to the person buying this game.
So your comment on this is that the marketing is really the thing that's the sticky wicket.
Exactly.
I agree with you that Fortnite is a probably a really horrible offender in this category. I don't think the concept of early access games is totally broken. I'm still, like, I agree with you that games should probably be a bit more final and maybe take like a day one patch before we put them out on store shelves, but it's just like, I've enjoyed early access games even more that like completely finished. Like Darkest Dungeon was an incredible example of that. Again, not this year. Again, there was nothing misleading about their marketing campaign or the Kickstarter or anything like that. But there are games out there, like Battle Chef Brigade, I think is one of the incredible Kickstarter stories. And like that game eventually got released, and like there are features missing from the Kickstarter campaign. And like, I know this isn't about Kickstarter campaigns, but that kind of sucks. Like, people saw builds of that game in early access that, you know, had different things in there. And, you know, I do think that I will concede that the marketing is kind of scummy, and I do wish it would. I think the messaging around early access games does need to improve.
Right.
I think early access games will continue to exist. I don't think that trend is going to go away at all. However, I do think that we can be better as an industry about how we approach this to players and how we sell this to people in stores. It's just, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth when you sell a full disc-based product and then don't disclose really until you connect online that it's an early access and this may not be the final version of the game.
Right. And I think you put it in better words than I did. That fundamentally is my argument here. It's misleading. The marketing is poor. The communication between the developer and the player, I think, could be better. And I think this is a trend that's going to continue. And I called out the other example with PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, being marketed. Remember at E3, they were like, it's exclusive to the Xbox One. Not really. You know, that it's exclusive as a console version, right? You're not being fair and obvious about it to the people who want to play this game. It's available on PC too. It's available on PC first.
Right.
Why do you have to give it this exclusive moniker? I don't really understand that. It's misleading. That's the whole point.
Well, right, and that's like marketing, like Microsoft spending their Microsoft marketing dollars to say that it's only available right now on Xbox One. But the PUBG Corporation has been pretty open about saying, you know, once that campaign ends, it might appear on the PS4.
Right.
We don't know. It's a big successful thing. Why wouldn't it be on more platforms?
Exactly.
So yeah, I agree with you that that's a little scummy. But okay, so it has to be one of the candidates.
Okay, let's run through. We need two more. Give me your two favorites out of this list.
Okay. I think the loot boxes in full price AAA games, we awarded that in another category. I think that's a bad trend. I think it has to be one of the three. I don't think it has to win. We're going to continue to see more and more of this. The problem is that the microtransaction success also gets at this idea, and you know, I think if I'm picking between those two in terms of worst trend, I think the problem I have really with microtransactions, loot boxes, whatever you want to call them, is that, like, despite all the hubbub about, you know, them detracting from gameplay progress and, you know, hampering development and, you know, the hubbub around it, people are buying them. And that means we're going to see more and more developers double down on including them in games. We're going to see more, for lack of a better term, development resources poured into modes and games that have loot boxes and microtransactions and gacha style mechanics that I just don't really think it, like, I play these kinds of games and I sometimes enjoy them, but every time I walk away feeling a little bit dirtier for having done so, because I know I'm just encouraging the trend. And there are people who, like, if you look at the balance sheets of some of these game development companies, these publishers, like, they're making millions and billions of dollars on these little individual cosmetic things, or on top, sometimes gameplay relevant things. That it's just like, why are we buying things that potentially could make your gameplay experience a little bit better, or even from the cosmetic standpoint, like make your character flashier? Like, we're basically paying for like more polygons, and that's just really, really gross.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just bad. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight microtransaction success means more games will get them in the future, and leave out the loot boxes thing. So we don't have to rehash that discussion, but it's just, I hope this trend doesn't continue.
Agreed. But yeah, loot boxes and full price AAA games has unfortunately been a trend for the past decade. So it's not anything new. It's just been really, the discussion surrounding all of that has really heated up at the end of this year, especially. So I agree with you that this is a trend. It's a worse trend. It's the fact that microtransactions and loot boxes, people are buying them in full games and not just free-to-play games, means that it's just going to encourage these major publishers and developers to shove them in places where they shouldn't be normally in video games. So
I do want to address. I do want to. I agree with you. That should be one of the three. I do want to address the one item on this list. Toxicity in games continues to persist. I think this has been probably the secret. I mean, not that much of a secret in gaming. Since gaming has kind of achieved a mainstream audience, this has continued to be an issue. I don't even really want to talk about this, only because, like, I really don't want to talk about this issue anymore because I don't really want to give it more oxygen in the room. It continues to happen. It continues to be a bad thing. We've seen a lot of sexual harassment in games, both for men and for women. And it's just really, like, on the player side, on the developer side, it just continues to make me feel not that great about games. I just, like, awarding it as a winner or even a candidate for anything is bad enough. I'm beside myself that this is continuing to be an issue. Like, why haven't we stomped this out yet? It boggles the mind. And compared to the rest of these things, it's actually the worst thing about gaming completely, but I just don't want to award it anything, even if it is the worst trend.
All right, fair enough. What else do we have here that you really feel strongly about?
Well, in terms of impact, I think VR software failing to reach critical mass and, like, people continue to invest in it and continue to hope it'll be a thing is, like, really interesting. It's kind of surprising to me that there isn't, like, a standout title that you can point to in VR that you're like, wow, I really need to I need to go out and buy a headset right now. There are some good games in VR right now. I would say the implementation of PSVR in Resident Evil 7 is really, really incredible. I think Res Infinite, really, really incredible, available on PSVR and on PC. But the rest of the, like, games that are available are things that are, like, either shooting galleries or glorified tech demos. And we just haven't seen a game that really takes advantage of the hardware all that much. It's just like one of those things where every time I look at, VR headsets are now on sale or now available, every time I'm so tempted to click buy. And then every time I pull away, I'm just like, wait a minute, this is just going to be another accessory that collects dust after I've had the, like, 2 cool 10-minute experiences with VR. And you have a PSVR, and would you say your purchase has been validated?
Not right now. I hear you, but the counter argument about this being the worst trend of 2017 is that we actually awarded this last year about VR floundering. So for that reason, I think we should disqualify it. This has been a trend since last year. And so it still hasn't quite taken off, I think, as many people would like it to. So far, PSVR is, you can't call it a runaway hit, but it's the strongest of the ones that are out there in the market right now. And now you're seeing a lot of competition in the market where more and more makers are announced. I just saw a post about the Magic Leap headset. There's more coming out. Microsoft is introducing their AR stuff pretty soon. I just think it's ripe for a bubble to burst, right? I think VR, it's been this way since last year, so I don't think it should be one of our final 3. So far, again, just to recap, we have misleading marketing of early access games, and microtransaction successes means more games will get them in the future. We still have to pick one more out of the remaining. Bubsy is back, nostalgic micro consoles, Nintendo's ongoing supply shortages, games copy PUBG with Battle Royale modes, and Microsoft's first-party development continues to flounder. Ryan, what do you feel the most strongly about?
I think it has to be Bubsy is back.
What?
Or alternately, long dead IP being revived because there are no new ideas. Like, look, we're used to seeing remasters of everything particularly on this generation of consoles, because in the beginning when the PS4 and Xbox One launched, there weren't a lot of, like, new ideas, or if there were, people weren't really all that excited about them. And now to bring back games like Bubsy and, like, another remaster of Shadow of the Colossus, the remaster of Crash Bandicoot, although, like, was a runaway financial success, like, why? Like, I would rather see a new Crash Bandicoot game or something else as opposed to like bringing that back up again. It's just it's one of those things that I see this happening and I'm just like, oh no, like we're this again. It's the like the whack-a-mole thing that keeps happening over and over and over again. It's just because there are no new creative ideas. It's not sequel fatigue. It's things that we like. I fully expect tomorrow for them to announce like a Boogerman sequel. Like there was that Toe Jam and Earl Kickstarter. It's one of those things where I wish they were doing new things with these old characters as opposed to just bringing back the old characters and making new games with the same old mechanics. Right? It's one of those. It makes me kind of like, oh really? Why?
Counterpoint, one more time. Sonic Mania. Tremendous success. They brought Sonic back in 2D form, and it was a runaway hit, okay? I think there were a lot of fresh new ideas in there, right? And this is a long-standing old IP, huge fan base for it, and I don't know if it's exactly a worse trend. There are people clamoring for these kinds of things. Older IPs, they're very nostalgic for these kinds of things. I don't know necessarily that you can lump in remasters or remakes within that same category. I think people still like it. I think there's a reason why we keep seeing more and more of these. There are people who have entered this console generation who've bought a PS4, an Xbox One, who may not have been a 360 owner or a PS3 owner in the past, and that's specifically to consoles. Now, with more and more people getting involved in PCs, you see a lot more ports from the past generation coming onto there, which I think explains a lot of the Bubsy is back mentality. These IPs returning yet again years later. There's still a market for that kind of thing. People are still looking for those games, even still to revisit. I know it's not necessarily new, but once we talk about our editor's choice picks for this year and a lot of other games that we're going to discuss in our consensus game of the year in our next episode, you're going to see that there are a lot of new, fresh ideas in this year. And this is the best time to be playing video games. We constantly talk about that, right? And I don't necessarily think that this is a trend that's brand new for 2017. I still think people are nostalgic for these old franchises, these characters, and they're still buying these kinds of games. So I don't know. I want to eliminate it.
All right. And to your point, some of the like remasters or like re-examinings of some of these ideas are some of the best games of the year. Like Wolfenstein 2, right, is a like incredible package that essentially redoing the Wolfenstein timeline. Mario Odyssey builds on the success of the previous Mario games. And like those are games in long-standing IP franchises, and they're being revived because people continue to want them. So, and there are new ideas in those games. So that's the argument against it. So, all right, I'll eliminate it. What do you see? I think I know the one you're leaning towards, and I don't think it deserves to be on this list. Games copying PUBG with battle royale modes. Surprise, a popular game takes off and people want to copy it, right? And on top of it, the Fortnite implementation of PUBG like actually made Fortnite a viable game. I'm super curious to see what the GTA Online version of Battle Royale is. Like, that could be really cool because GTA Online is like this insane experiment that should have never happened. I would love to see what Counter-Strike does with spawning in 100 players on Dust DE. Like that sounds really cool to me. That's not a bad thing. I could see where it might get oversaturated, but we're not at that point yet. We might get there next year.
Fair.
I think it has to be Microsoft's first-party development continuing to flounder. I think that's a super bad trend for Microsoft as a platform, as a developer and publisher. They just cannot get to the finish line with some of these games. And like a lot of the games that they did get to the finish line with in more recent history, Halo 5, Gears of War 4, have not been, granted those were last year, but they weren't runaway successes. And the whole justification for Xbox One X, the like showcase piece for that was Crackdown 3. They talked about how graphically intensive it was, how it would use all this data from the cloud, and the only possible on the Xbox One X. And then the console launches and Crackdown 3 isn't there. Like, it's kind of like a record scratch moment. It's just like,
yeah.
Well,
and what else do they have on the docket? Not much else.
Right. And Forza Motorsport 7, like that game came out in, believe August or September. what is Microsoft doing? Like, it's just boggles the minds that they're coming out with this new console. Typically, you have software that launches with the console to justify the upgraded graphics, the smoother processing, 4K, blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing that can speak to all those bullet points. Nothing. I mean, not nothing. They're remastering games that appeared on the Xbox One platform. And as far as I understand it, the support for Xbox One X enhanced games is really great. But
is it enough to justify the cost? I don't think so.
Right. I don't know. But it's an open question, and it's a question that we're going to continue to experience if Microsoft doesn't get their act together. So
agreed.
I think it's a pretty bad trend, and I think it has to be one of these other three. Just to speak quickly to the other two, I don't think nostalgic microconsoles are a bad thing. In fact, they might be a good thing. They're playing on our nostalgia, right? And they're letting a whole new generation of gamers get to experience games that they never got to see before. Particularly in the case of the SNES Classic, the Super Nintendo, one of the best consoles ever. Like, I'm glad that happened. Nintendo's ongoing supply shortages, while I don't think resolved, Nintendo always does this. They arguably artificially constrain their supply. They'll never admit to it, but they probably do. For the most part, at least in the US, they've resolved a lot of these issues. It's pretty easy to walk into a store and find a Switch. Not the same with the NES Classic or the Super Nintendo Classic, but it's getting there. Same thing, like, I can regularly find Amiibo now, and
they overcorrected with Amiibo. You definitely noticed that.
Right. And now we're starting to see deal on Amiibo, so I don't think the supply shortage is going to continue to be a story for them. But it might if they do another console, or, as long as Nintendo continues to exist, they probably will have that issue. So what wins?
It has to be the microtransaction success, in my opinion. I mean, yes, this has happened for a long time. Like I said before, it's been a decade worth of DLC that has included microtransactions, extra loot boxes in full-priced games before on console and PC. And unfortunately, it continues to get worse. And this year has been an absolute boiling point. People are fed up with this. One of the most downvoted posts in Reddit history, if not the most downvoted post, was the Ask Me Anything, the AMA, involving the development team behind Star Wars Battlefront 2 because of the reaction to the loot box controversy. So much so that literally Disney contacted EA and made a formal announcement and forced both DICE and EA to rip out the microtransactions and loot boxes until they got their act together, until they formulated it better to improve the progression, and they will go back in and later patch it. And that's really, really just a sign and a state of what the industry is in. And we didn't even really talk about that much with some of the other games. I mean, a lot of AAA games, Forza Motorsport 7, Injustice 2, Shadow of War. There are a lot of the same repeat offenders, major developers, major publishers still getting in on it, insisting that these are great for their shareholders, because of course they are. And we're only seeing revenues increase for a lot of these games. I think the cash cows are primarily FIFA and Madden, and unfortunately a lot of these mobile titles that are just really, really disgusting with the amount of microtransactions that are baked into them. I don't even care if they're free to play too. They are very predatory, especially towards kids, unfortunately.
And I think that's the key word there. I set aside the financial aspect of it. Like, the financial aspect of it means that we're going to see this more and more. But the predatory nature, a lot of these microtransactions is just like really disgusting. And unfortunately, I think because they're succeeding, we're going to see them more in the games. And I think that's what really this headline speaks to. It's definitely the worst trend of 2017. Microtransaction success means more games will get them in the future. I can't even with that. With our runners-up, misleading marketing of early access games, and Microsoft's first-party development continuing to flounder.
And with that, that was our final category for part 2 of our Game of the Year 2017 deliberations. So let's recap what we decided on this episode. We started off with Best New Character being Pascal from Nier Automata, with runners-up Fane from Divinity 2 Original Sin, and Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. Best gameplay moment was the audition from Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, with runners-up Ending E in Nier Automata, and Majima's jazzy tutorial in Yakuza 0. Best music, Persona 5, followed up with Nier Automata and Sonic Mania. our biggest, most important news story of 2017 was the loot box outrage boiling over, with runners-up Nintendo recovering financially with the Switch release and the Xbox One X announced and released. And finally, our worst trend of 2017 is the microtransaction successes, meaning more games will get them in the future, followed by Microsoft's first-party development continuing to flounder and misleading marketing of early access games as our two runners-up. So, we just want to say thank you so much for listening so far. We have episodes 1 and 2 wrapped up with our Game of the Year 2017 deliberation. Stay tuned for part 3, where we talk about our top 10 personal editor's choice list, followed by our consensus Game of the Year discussion for 2017.
A written wrap-up of our awards thus far is available at the link in the show notes. And we just wanted to say, if you like this episode, please head over to Apple Podcasts and Stitcher to subscribe, and please rate and review our show. It's a huge, huge help in our ratings. But you can also subscribe to our show on Google Play Music, TuneIn, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. You can also like our Facebook page, facebook.com/1pvs2p. Watch us on Twitch. We're going to be doing a lot more exciting streams in the new year. Or you can follow us on Twitter, where we're very active, at 1pvs2p. And for more video game news, reviews, history, culture, and music, you can check out our website and back episodes, 1pvs2p.com.
As always, thank you to Phonetic Hero for letting us play his music for our show. Coffee Stomp and Super Manly Brothers X are those songs. Both are part of the compilation project Chip Tunes Equals Win. I'm Taylor Ray. That's my co-host, Ryan Ray. Thank you for listening.
And just like, shut up, sucker, that kind of talk.